Before Rick Famuyiwa became the mastermind behind The Mandalorian, he was selling sneakers at a Beverly Hills Niketown while secretly crafting his breakout film, The Wood. But what you don't know about this beloved coming-of-age classic will blow your mind. From a failed USC basketball player who scored only 2 points in his entire college career, to studio executives demanding inappropriate butt-grabbing scenes, The Wood harbors secrets that are stranger than its nostalgic fiction. Fact 1. Director sold sneakers while writing. Before Rick Famuyiwa became one of Hollywood's most respected filmmakers, he was clocking in shifts at the Beverly Hills Niketown, helping customers find the perfect pair of Air Jordans and running shoes. This wasn't just a temporary side gig while he waited for his big break. Famuyiwa worked full-time in retail while secretly crafting what would become his breakout film, The Wood, during his off hours. Every day after finishing his shift selling sneakers to Beverly Hills shoppers, Famuyiwa would head home and spend his nights writing the screenplay that would launch his career. The contrast couldn't have been more striking. By day, he was folding shoeboxes and working the cash register. But by night, he was developing the semi-autobiographical story about 3 friends growing up in Inglewood, California. This wasn't a brief period of struggling artist life either. Famuyiwa maintained his Niketown job throughout the entire process of developing The Wood, even while he was attending the prestigious Sundance Director's Lab in 1997 to perfect his script. The irony wasn't lost on him that he was selling athletic footwear in one of the most affluent areas of Los Angeles while writing about his middle-class African-American experiences growing up in Inglewood. The Niketown job provided Famuyiwa with the financial stability he needed to pursue his filmmaking dreams without the pressure of immediate success. It also kept him grounded in the real world while he worked on a project that was deeply personal and drew from his own childhood memories. His fellow employees had no idea that their co-worker was quietly developing a screenplay that would eventually attract the attention of MTV Films and Paramount Pictures, ultimately launching a successful career in Hollywood. Fact 2. Failed basketball career inspired success. Rick Famuyiwa's basketball statistics at the University of Southern California tell the story of one of the most unsuccessful athletic careers that ever led to Hollywood success. During his time as a walk-on player for the USC Trojans basketball team, Famuyiwa managed to score exactly 2 points and grab 4 rebounds in just 11 minutes of playing time across 2 entire seasons, from 1991 to 1993. Playing under Hall of Fame coach George Raveling, the 6'4" forward was essentially a bench warmer who rarely saw meaningful action during games. His most productive season was 1992 to 1993, when he actually got those 2 points on 2 shots. But even then, he was clearly not destined for basketball stardom. The 1992 Trojans team he rode the bench for was actually quite successful, winning a school record-tying 24 games and finishing ranked 8th nationally, before losing on a miracle half-court buzzer shot by Georgia Tech in the second round of the NCAA tournament. After the 1992 to 1993 season ended, Famuyiwa made the decision that would change his life forever. He left the basketball team after being accepted into USC's prestigious School of Cinema and Television, trading his spot on the bench for a seat in film classes. As Famuyiwa himself later admitted, he knew his basketball dreams had come to an end well before he officially quit the team. The transition from failed athlete to successful filmmaker wasn't immediate, but Famuyiwa's basketball experience taught him valuable lessons about teamwork and perseverance. His senior thesis film in 1995 was actually called Blacktop Lingo, a 12-minute short about basketball that earned critical acclaim and helped launch his career in the film industry. Fact 3. Studio wanted inappropriate ending scene. During a visit to his alma mater USC years after The Wood was released, director Rick Famuyiwa revealed one of the most uncomfortable moments he faced during production when Paramount Pictures executives made a disturbing creative suggestion. The studio bosses wanted Famuyiwa to add a scene in the final moments of the film where the character Mike, played by Omar Epps, would pinch his love interest Alicia's buttocks purely for comedic effect. The executives pitched this addition as a way to get some extra laughs from the audience, apparently thinking that having the adult Mike repeat the same inappropriate behavior from his teenage years would be funny. This suggestion came despite the fact that the entire arc of Mike's character in the film shows his growth from an awkward teenager who makes mistakes to a mature adult who respects women and understands the consequences of his actions. Famuyiwa's reaction to this studio note was swift and definitive. He completely refused to shoot the requested scene, standing firm against the pressure from Paramount executives who were financing his directorial debut. This decision required significant courage from a first-time filmmaker who was working with a major studio and could have faced serious consequences for refusing to follow their creative direction. The suggested scene would have completely undermined the character development and emotional growth that the film had carefully built throughout its runtime. Mike's journey from his teenage mistake of inappropriately touching Alicia to becoming a respectful adult was central to the movie's theme of maturity and personal growth. By refusing to shoot this scene, Famuyiwa preserved the integrity of his story and demonstrated his commitment to creating authentic characters rather than cheap laughs that would have damaged the film's message about respect and personal development. Fact 4. Major music anachronism error. Movie fans who pay close attention to period details caught a significant timeline mistake in The Wood that reveals how tricky it can be to recreate the authentic sound of a bygone era. During one of the film's 1980s flashback sequences, viewers can clearly hear Too Short's rap song, Freaky Tales, playing in the background while Stacy is driving the boys to their school dance. But there's one major problem with this musical choice. The scene is specifically set in 1986, when the main characters are still in their teenage years and experiencing the adventures that would shape their friendships. However, Freaky Tales wasn't actually released until July 20th, 1987. Making it impossible for the characters to be listening to this particular song during the timeline established in the movie. This type of mistake is called an anachronism, and it's more common in period films than most viewers realize. Music supervisors and filmmakers often face the challenge of balancing historical accuracy with creating the right mood and energy for their scenes. Sometimes a song that perfectly captures the feeling of an era might not have existed during the exact year being portrayed on screen. The error is particularly noticeable to hip-hop fans who are familiar with Too Short's catalog and the chronology of when his songs were released. Freaky Tales became one of Too Short's most recognizable tracks, so its inclusion in the film was likely intended to instantly transport viewers back to the late 1980s hip-hop scene. Unfortunately, the song choice ended up being about a year ahead of the movie's internal timeline, creating a small but glaring continuity error that sharp-eyed viewers have pointed out since the film's release. Fact 5. Sundance Lab discovered half the cast. The casting of The Wood happened through one of the most prestigious and competitive programs in independent filmmaking. But it all started with a chance encounter at an unusual Los Angeles venue. Rick Famuyiwa's journey to finding his perfect cast began when producers Albert Berger and Ron Yerxa attended a script reading at the Jazz Bakery, a popular coffee house and performance space in Culver City that regularly hosted literary events and screenplay presentations. Berger and Yerxa, who had produced acclaimed films like Election and would later work on Little Miss Sunshine, were immediately impressed by Famuyiwa's authentic voice and compelling story about friendship and growing up in Inglewood. They recognized the potential in his semi-autobiographical screenplay and decided to champion the project, eventually bringing it to MTV Films and Paramount Pictures. The real magic happened when Famuyiwa was accepted into the highly selective Sundance Institute Directors Lab in 1997. This intensive program brings together emerging filmmakers to workshop their projects with established industry professionals and provides invaluable networking opportunities. During his time at the lab, Famuyiwa was able to identify and connect with close to half of his eventual cast, including the two actors who would become the film's biggest stars. Omar Epps, who played the adult version of Mike, and Taye Diggs, who portrayed Roland, were both discovered through connections made during this Sundance experience. The Directors Lab not only helped Famuyiwa refine his script and directorial vision, but it also provided him with access to a network of talented actors who understood and connected with his authentic portrayal of African-American middle-class life. This casting process through Sundance helped ensure that the film would feature performers who truly understood the characters and could bring genuine emotion to their roles. Fact 6. Creates shared universe with Dope. 16 years after The Wood hit theaters, Rick Famuyiwa created one of the most subtle and clever connections in modern cinema by linking his breakthrough film to his 2015 coming-of-age movie Dope through a single character who bridges both stories. The character Stacy, originally played by Deandra Bonds as Alicia's protective older brother and blood gang member in The Wood, reappears in Dope as the exact same person but with a completely transformed life. In The Wood, Stacy is introduced as a threatening figure who beats up young Mike for inappropriately touching his sister, but later shows his more complex nature by protecting the boys during a police encounter and giving Mike advice about winning over Alicia. This character represented the complicated reality of young men in Inglewood who might be involved in gang life but still maintain codes of honor and family loyalty. When Famuyiwa brought Stacy back for Dope, he made a deliberate choice to show how people can change their lives over time. The Stacy viewers meet in the later film is now working as a high school security guard, having left his gang life behind and found legitimate employment helping to protect students. This transformation wasn't accidental. Famuyiwa specifically wrote Stacy into Dope to demonstrate that his new characters were living in the same Inglewood community as the characters from The Wood. The director explained in interviews that he wanted to show his new audience that both films existed in the same world, creating a shared universe that spans multiple decades of Inglewood history. This connection also allowed Deandra Bonds to revisit a character he had played 16 years earlier, showing the actor's own growth while demonstrating how people from challenging backgrounds can turn their lives around and contribute positively to their communities. Fact 7. Soundtrack more successful than expected. The music from The Wood became a commercial phenomenon that far exceeded anyone's expectations, proving that a mid-budget coming-of-age film could generate a soundtrack with serious staying power on the charts. Released on July 13, 1999 by Jive Records, the album titled Music From and inspired by the motion picture The Wood climbed to number 16 on the Billboard 200 chart and reached an impressive number 2 position on the top R&B and hip-hop albums chart. What made the soundtrack's success even more remarkable was how quickly it achieved gold certification from the Recording Industry Association of America. The album reached gold status on August 25, 1999, meaning it sold over 500,000 copies in just over a month after its release. This rapid success demonstrated that audiences were hungry for the blend of hip-hop and R&B music that perfectly captured the nostalgic mood of the film. The soundtrack's biggest breakout hit was Joe's smooth R&B ballad, I Wanna Know, which became not only a chart-topping success but also earned recognition from the music industry's most prestigious organizations. The song won the 2001 ASCAP Film and Television Music Award for Most Performed Songs from Motion Pictures, cementing its place as one of the most successful movie soundtrack singles of its era. Interestingly, Joe has revealed that he originally submitted I Wanna Know to the soundtrack almost by accident, claiming he didn't have anything else to send to the record label and just happened to have the song lying around his studio. The soundtrack also featured notable collaborations like Neck UV de Woods by Mystical and Outkast, which helped introduce the film to hip-hop audiences and contributed to the album's crossover appeal across multiple musical genres. Fact 8. Most songs not actually in film. Fans who bought The Wood soundtrack expecting to relive every musical moment from the movie were in for a surprise when they discovered that a significant portion of the album never actually plays during the film itself. Despite carrying the official title Music From and inspired by the motion picture The Wood, the 18-track album contains 7 songs that viewers will never hear while watching Rick Famuyiwa's coming-of-age story. Specifically, tracks 3 through 7 and tracks 11 through 14 are completely absent from the movie's audio, meaning that nearly 40% of the soundtrack exists purely as companion music rather than actual film content. This practice was common in the late 1990s, when record labels would use popular movies as vehicles to promote new music and introduce artists to wider audiences, even if those songs had no connection to the film's narrative or scenes. The inspired by portion of the soundtrack title gave the record label legal and creative freedom to include additional hip-hop and R&B tracks that matched the movie's overall vibe without requiring them to appear in specific scenes. This approach allowed Jive Records to create a more commercially viable album by including popular artists and songs that might appeal to fans of the movie's genre and themes. For movie soundtrack collectors, this disconnect between the album and the actual film can be frustrating, especially when they're trying to recreate the exact musical experience they had while watching the movie. The songs that do appear in the film are sprinkled throughout the remaining tracks, but listeners have to know which ones actually play during specific scenes. This marketing strategy helped boost soundtrack sales, but also created confusion for fans who expected every song on the album to be directly connected to moments they remembered from watching The Wood in theaters. Fact 9. Semi-autobiographical North Carolina connection. The central storyline of The Wood, about a newcomer trying to fit into a new community, wasn't just a fictional plot device. It was Rick Famuyiwa drawing directly from his own childhood experience of being uprooted and having to start over in a completely different environment. Just like his main character Mike, played by Omar Epps in the adult timeline, and Sean Nelson as the teenager, Famuyiwa actually moved from North Carolina to Inglewood, California, during his junior high school years. This real-life parallel between director and character gave the film an authentic emotional core that resonated with audiences who had experienced similar transitions in their own lives. Famuyiwa understood firsthand what it felt like to be the outsider trying to navigate new social dynamics, make friends, and figure out where you belong when everything around you is unfamiliar and potentially intimidating. The move from North Carolina to California represented more than just a change of location for both Famuyiwa and his fictional counterpart. It was a cultural shift that required adapting to different social codes, slang, fashion, and ways of interacting with peers. Inglewood in the 1980s had its own distinct identity and social hierarchies that would have been completely foreign to someone arriving from the South. Famuyiwa has spoken about how this personal experience shaped not only the character of Mike, but also the entire emotional framework of the film. The awkwardness, the desire to fit in, and the mistakes that Mike makes throughout the movie all stemmed from Famuyiwa's own memories of being 12 years old and trying to find his place in a new community. This autobiographical foundation helped ensure that the film's portrayal of teenage friendship and coming-of-age challenges felt genuine, rather than manufactured for dramatic effect. Fact 10. Convenience store contains 1990s products. Sharp-eyed viewers who pay attention to product placement and period details have spotted several glaring anachronisms in one of The Wood's most important flashback scenes, revealing just how challenging it can be for filmmakers to accurately recreate a specific time period. During the convenience store robbery sequence that's supposed to take place in 1986, when the teenage characters are on their way to the school dance, the store shelves and displays contain products that wouldn't exist for several more years. The most obvious mistake involves Wrigley's Winter Fresh gum, which appears prominently in the store even though this particular flavor wasn't introduced to the market until the early 1990s. This means the gum that viewers can see in the supposedly 1986 scene was actually impossible to purchase at that time, creating a clear timeline error that breaks the film's historical accuracy. Even more noticeable to beverage enthusiasts are the late 1990s era 7-Up logos visible on the refrigerator units in the background of the store. While the filmmakers attempted to cover these modern logos with stickers and makeshift banners to make them look more period-appropriate, the contemporary 7-Up branding can still be seen peeking through behind the classic Mountain Dew logo stickers that were placed on top. These types of product placement errors are surprisingly common in period films, especially lower-budget productions where the art department might not have the resources to completely transform every visible brand and product to match the specific year being portrayed. The convenience store scene was crucial to the plot, since it's where Stacy commits the armed robbery that later helps the boys avoid trouble with the police. But the modern products scattered throughout the location remind viewers that they're watching a movie made in 1999 rather than experiencing an authentic 1980s moment. Fact 11. School location geographic impossibility. Local Los Angeles residents who are familiar with the South Bay area discovered a significant geographic error in The Wood that reveals the practical challenges filmmakers face when trying to shoot in specific neighborhoods. While the entire story is supposed to take place in Inglewood, California, with the characters attending St. Bernard High School as Inglewood residents, the actual school scenes were filmed at a completely different location several miles away in the neighboring community of Playa del Rey. St. Bernard High School, which serves as the educational backdrop for many of the film's teenage flashback sequences, is actually located in Playa del Rey rather than Inglewood, creating a geographic inconsistency that sharp-eyed locals would immediately recognize. Playa del Rey sits closer to Los Angeles International Airport and the Pacific Ocean, while Inglewood is positioned further inland, making them distinctly different neighborhoods with their own unique characteristics and demographics. This location switch was likely made for purely practical filmmaking reasons, such as scheduling conflicts, permit issues, or the specific visual requirements that the production team needed for their shots. Finding the right school that could accommodate a film crew while also providing the authentic look and feel that director Rick Famuyiwa wanted for his story probably took precedence over maintaining perfect geographic accuracy. For viewers who aren't familiar with the precise boundaries and locations of different Los Angeles area communities, this geographic displacement wouldn't be noticeable at all. However, for people who grew up in Inglewood or the surrounding South Bay neighborhoods, seeing their local high school characters supposedly attending a school in a different city entirely would stand out as an obvious mistake that breaks the film's commitment to authentic local storytelling and geographic precision. Fact 12. Accidental handshake goes unnoticed. Sometimes the most human moments in movies happen completely by accident, and The Wood contains a perfect example of an unscripted blooper that somehow made it through the entire post-production process and into the final theatrical release. During a scene where the adult characters Slim and Mike greet each other at a convenience store, Richard T. Jones, who plays Slim, completely whiffs on his attempted handshake with Omar Epps, who portrays Mike, creating an awkward moment that should have been caught during editing. The mishap occurs when Slim extends his hand to shake Mike's hand, in what should have been a simple, everyday greeting between old friends. Instead of the smooth handshake that was likely intended, Slim's hand clearly misses Mike's hand entirely on the first attempt, forcing both actors to quickly recover and try again. Even on the second attempt, the handshake is noticeably clumsy and doesn't quite connect properly, making it obvious that something went wrong during the original take. What makes this blooper particularly interesting is that it survived all the way through the film's editing process without anyone deciding to reshoot the scene or use a different take. In most Hollywood productions, editors and directors would catch this type of obvious mistake during post-production and either fix it with additional footage or choose an alternate take where the handshake worked correctly. The fact that this awkward handshake moment made it into the final cut suggests either that the filmmakers were working with limited takes of this particular scene, or that they simply didn't notice the mistake during the editing process. For eagle-eyed viewers who spot this blooper, it serves as a reminder that even professional actors sometimes have coordination issues and that independent films don't always have the luxury of multiple takes to get every small detail perfect. Fact 13. Female gaze shower scene purpose. One of the most memorable scenes in The Wood serves absolutely no narrative purpose whatsoever, existing purely as eye candy for female viewers in what film critics have identified as a rare example of the female gaze in a male-centered coming-of-age story. After Roland becomes violently sick and vomits all over everyone's formal wedding attire in the car, the three adult friends end up in Tanya's backyard, where they strip down and wash themselves off using an outdoor shower or hose. From a storytelling perspective, this scene could have been handled in countless other ways that would have advanced the plot more efficiently. The characters could have cleaned up indoors, changed clothes off camera, or simply cut to them already cleaned up and ready for the next scene. Instead, director Rick Famuyiwa made the deliberate choice to show Omar Epps, Richard T. Jones, and Taye Diggs completely shirtless and displaying their rear ends prominently for the camera. Film analysts have pointed out that this scene functions exactly like the gratuitous shower scenes featuring attractive women that appear in countless male-oriented movies, except that it's designed specifically to appeal to female moviegoers who might appreciate seeing three physically fit, attractive black men in a state of undress. The camera lingers on their bodies in a way that emphasizes their physical appeal, rather than focusing on their embarrassment or the practical necessity of getting clean. This type of deliberate male objectification was relatively uncommon in late 1990s cinema, making The Wood somewhat ahead of its time in recognizing that female audience members might appreciate some visual appeal directed specifically at them. The scene demonstrates how filmmakers can include fan service for different demographic groups while still maintaining the overall tone and integrity of their story. Fact 14. Lip sync error during dance. During one of the most romantic and pivotal scenes in The Wood, a technical mistake creates a distracting continuity error that pulls observant viewers out of the emotional moment between Mike and Alicia at their school dance. As the young couple shares an intimate moment on the dance floor, Alicia begins singing along to the classic Luther Vandross and Cheryl Lynn duet, "If This World Were Mine," but her mouth movements are clearly out of sync with the lyrics playing on the soundtrack. The scene is meant to showcase the growing connection between Mike and Alicia as they slow dance together, with Alicia's participation in the song demonstrating her comfort and romantic interest in her new boyfriend. However, actress Melinda Williams' lip movements don't match the timing of the vocal track, creating an obvious mismatch that becomes increasingly noticeable the longer the scene continues. This type of lip sync error typically occurs during post-production, when the music track and the filmed footage don't align properly, either because the playback on set was different from the final soundtrack version, or because the editing process inadvertently shifted the timing between the audio and visual elements. Fixing this kind of mistake usually requires either re-recording the audio to match the actor's mouth movements, or digitally adjusting the timing to synchronize everything correctly. The error is particularly noticeable because the camera focuses directly on Alicia's face during this romantic moment, making her mouth movements a central visual element of the scene rather than a background detail that might go unnoticed. For viewers who are sensitive to audio-visual synchronization issues, this mistake can be jarring enough to interrupt their emotional investment in what should be one of the film's most tender and important relationship-building moments between the two main characters. Fact 15. Showtime reboot features original actors. 22 years after The Wood first hit theaters, Showtime decided to create a television adaptation that would bring the beloved story into the modern era, but they made an unusual casting decision that created a unique bridge between the original film and the new series. When the premium cable network ordered a pilot in August 2021, they brought back two of the original movie's actors to reprise their exact same roles, creating a rare example of cross-generational casting that spans more than 2 decades. Richard T. Jones, who played the adult version of Slim in the 1999 film, returned to portray the same character in the Showtime pilot, now presumably in his 40s or 50s and dealing with a completely different set of life challenges. Tamala Jones also came back to play Tanya, the character who had been Roland's ex-girlfriend in the original movie, and provided the backyard location where the men cleaned up after the vomiting incident. This casting choice was particularly interesting because the Showtime adaptation wasn't designed as a direct sequel to the original film, but rather as a contemporary reimagining that focuses on 3 young black men currently living in the gentrifying Los Angeles suburb of Inglewood. The decision to include the original actors suggests that the show creators wanted to maintain some connection to the beloved film while exploring how the community and its challenges have evolved over the past 2 decades. The pilot, written by Justin Hillian and directed by original filmmaker Rick Famuyiwa, was described as an honest look at friendship and dating from the perspective of modern young men dealing with fatherhood, ambition, and loyalty. By bringing back Jones and Tamala Jones, the production created an intergenerational element that allowed longtime fans of the original movie to see familiar faces while introducing new characters and storylines for contemporary audiences.